Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive, fundamental shift happening right now in the world of project management. We're looking at how modern delivery leaders are actively evolving. They're stepping away from being traditional task enforcers and stepping up as true system architects. We're talking about leaving behind that old, output-driven model of just handing out assignments and hounding people for status updates. Instead, we're moving toward a modern model that treats context, culture, and flow as your absolute most critical engineering leverage points.
To really understand this, think about how we got here. The evolution of project management over the decades tells a pretty fascinating story. Back in the 1990s, it was all about standardization, right? Strict process discipline. Then, moving into the 2000s, the focus shifted heavily toward integration. The 2010s brought us stakeholder engagement, and of course agility. And now? Well, in the 2020s, we are living in the era of core principles, rapid adaptability, and AI-enabled thinking. And here's the thing. These frameworks didn't evolve just because some institute decided it was time for a refresh. They evolved because the sheer, overwhelming complexity of our world literally demanded it. The future horizon hasn't just shrunk. It's completely collapsed. We aren't waiting for the future anymore. We're operating in it right now.
So, to operate in this new reality, we have to rethink some foundational concepts. Section 1. Agility as a network property.
We really have to start by reframing agility. It's not just some rigid process, it's a state of high velocity paired with absolute stability. Because honestly, velocity without context is just noise. The goal isn't simply to move fast and break things, it's about reducing cycle time, cutting down on cognitive load, eliminating those brutal cross-team wait times, and building feedback loops that actually respond to real-world data. That's exactly why in highly complex, heavily regulated spaces, like banking for example, choosing between pure agile and pure waterfall is a total myth. The most successful initiatives always balance both. Agile gives your teams iterative speed and adaptability, which is perfect for keeping up with evolving customer expectations. But waterfall? Waterfall provides the absolute necessary governance, the regulatory compliance, and the centralized planning you need for massive dependencies across risk, legal, and multiple business units.
In the real world, a hybrid approach seamlessly links these two environments together. It's really about knowing which tool fits which stage of the delivery lifecycle. You apply structural governance up front during strategic planning and funding, heavily leaning on waterfall. Then you shift gears into iterative execution, those agile sprints, so you can gather continuous stakeholder feedback while you build. Finally, you transition right back to waterfall for the enterprise release and the strict production governance. It perfectly balances necessary compliance with rapid innovation.
Now that we've mapped out the structural flow, let's pivot to the technological edge. Section 2, Context Engineering and the AI Stack.
We have officially entered the era of context engineering. As a modern leader, you don't tell your senior talent how to build. You engineer the system so the why is absolutely undeniable. And here is a crucial reality check for everyone talking about artificial intelligence right now. AI alone does not create value. Context does. An AI system needs the entire delivery ecosystem to actually be helpful. Think about it. If your AI only has access to a basic status report, it's only going to summarize a basic status report. If it only sees surface-level data, you are only going to get surface-level insights.
But when you build a rich data ecosystem, that's where the magic happens. We're talking about feeding the system a complete stack of context. Everything from high-level executive objectives and stakeholder needs, cascading all the way down through the delivery pipeline to granular financial and resource constraints. When you engineer your systems to feed AI these 7 strategic layers, it totally transforms. It goes from being a glorified chatbot into a true delivery intelligence partner. Imagine waking up to an AI chief of staff that analyzes your Jira data, scans your RAID logs, and checks resource utilization before you've even poured your first cup of coffee. It can automatically highlight which specific teams are burning out and which emerging dependencies need your attention today.
This completely redefines what a delivery leader actually does. The biggest shift we're seeing is moving away from looking in the rearview mirror, just reporting what happened in the past, to looking through the windshield, actively predicting what happens next. The AI takes on all that heavy lifting of gathering notes, tracking escalations, and formatting executive dashboards. By eliminating all that low-value administrative work, leaders are finally freed up to focus on what matters most. You get to align stakeholders, make highly informed decisions, and anticipate bottlenecks long before they happen. You become an architect of context.
But, even with the most advanced AI context stack on the planet, we have to talk about the humans in the loop. Section 3, Psychological Safety as Risk Management.
Because the best data in the world won't save you if your culture is broken.
Welcome to the dark matter of project failure. I want you to think of your initiatives kind of like an iceberg. That tiny tip visible above the water, that represents the risks we openly discuss in meetings. But that massive, dangerous chunk hiding below the surface, those are the known risks that stay completely unspoken. This proves that psychological safety isn't just some nice-to-have HR perk. It is a critical operational safeguard. High accountability absolutely requires high safety. High-performing engineering teams need environments that absorb risk, where failing fast is okay and speaking up is rewarded.
Every troubled initiative broadcasts warning signs long before failure actually hits, and almost always, someone on the team has spotted at least one of them. The four most common signs are glaringly clear. First, unrealistic deadlines that were set by hope rather than actual data. Second, missing dependencies where everyone just kind of assumes someone else owns the handoff. Third, disengaged stakeholders who are totally quiet during planning but super demanding at the very end. And fourth, exhausted teams delivering on fumes, literally just one sprint away from total burnout. Someone always sees these things happening.
But seeing the warning sign and actually saying something about it, those are two very different things. The gap between seeing the smoke and yelling fire in the boardroom is exactly where projects quietly derail. It's that zipped mouth during a critical status meeting. The real risk doesn't hide in your JIRA data. It hides in what your people consciously choose not to say out loud.
And the numbers behind this are just staggering. Get this. A full 70% of red flag risks were actually known early by someone on the team, but they were raised entirely too late to do anything about them. Let that sink in for a second. The majority of project-killing issues aren't out-of-the-blue, unpredictable surprises. They are quiet secrets. Even more shockingly, 1 in 5 teams admit that their single biggest, most critical risk never even made it onto the official risk register, never even written down. If your culture doesn't allow people to comfortably point out a failing strategy, all the AI forecasting and agile methodologies in the world are not going to save your delivery.
Okay, so let's bring all of this together. Section 4, the triad, and how we become true architects of flow.
When context engineering, agility, and psychological safety perfectly interlock, timing becomes absolutely everything. Context engineering gives your teams the alignment they need. Agility gives them the speed, and psychological safety gives them the confidence to execute without fear of failure. But you have to put a magnifying glass over your foundation while the project is still tracking green. Every project is racing against the clock. By the time we log our lessons learned at the end of a failed or heavily delayed project, the most expensive damage has already been done. The lesson was already learned the hard way. We have to shift our focus to surfacing uncomfortable truths early.
So, how do we actually do that? Here are 3 concrete habits you can use to expose those unspoken risks while it's still cheap to fix them. First, actively ask your team what is not on the register. Literally end your reviews with that exact prompt. Second, make candor safe. If raising a concern feels politically dangerous, people will just stop doing it. And third, celebrate early flags. Treat a concern raised in week 2 as a massive save for the whole team, not as a complaint. Again, high accountability requires high safety. Without safety, teams hide failure until it's far too late.
I want to leave you with this final, crucial question to ask yourselves and your teams today. What is that one risk for your team right now that people are afraid to say out loud, even while the project is still green? Take a moment to really think about that, because surfacing uncomfortable truths early and intentionally engineering an environment where that is possible, that is the whole game. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.